In many nations around the world, the persecution of Christians is happening on a daily basis. Open Doors Canada says each year 260 million Christians are persecuted for their faith in Jesus, and that number is going up. Now, what can we as believers in Canada do to help support our brothers and sisters? Prayer is probably a good start. Joining me now to talk about it further is Gary Stagg, Executive Director of Open Doors Canada, joining me from Mississauga, Ontario. Gary, welcome back to BCN.
It's wonderful to be here. Thank you for having me.
Now, for those who may not know, what exactly is Open Doors Canada all about? What does your organization do?
Our organization supports persecuted Christians all around the world. It started 65 years ago with a guy by the name of Brother Andrew, who felt called of God to smuggle Bibles behind the Iron Curtain. Wow. And of course, since then, with the rise of Christian persecution, the ministry has expanded so that we work in over 60 countries around the world. We strengthen and equip Christians in the most dangerous places where to live as a Christian. And we provide discipleship, safe houses, trauma counseling, job training. We train leaders. We provide basic needs. We basically do whatever the persecuted church is asking us to do. So they're the ones that know what they need. And so we're here to respond to their needs. And we do that the best that we can.
Why does Open Doors produce the World Watchlist each and every year? How is the list put together?
The World Watchlist is put together by a lot of research that's happening basically around the clock. We have people that are in the field, people that work behind a desk, and their job is to put together the statistics to monitor what's happening all around the world when it comes to Christian persecution. And so it's known as the best resource of its kind, and a lot of governments and different political organizations, you name it, they look at it for direction in what's happening with Christians and in general religious persecution around the world.
Now, apparently, in some of these countries where Christians are persecuted, women are doubly persecuted for their faith and their gender. Can you tell me more about that?
Well, in many cases, unfortunately, women are considered to be almost second-class citizens in some of these cultures. And because of that, not only are they persecuted for their faith, but they are doubly persecuted because of their gender. And there's a whole study that's been done on this and a lot of research that's gone into it. And Open Doors just produced a paper on gendered persecution and the implications of that around the world for women. So, yeah, you think of the persecution on one level, but when it comes to women, there's a double whammy. They are persecuted doubly.
Now, before the COVID-19 pandemic hit, Gary, you traveled to Malaysia and Egypt. What was the purpose of going to those countries?
The purpose of going was just to see the work that's happening, to encourage persecuted believers in those countries, just to see all of the work that we're doing there as an organization. And so it was a real joy for me to go and to meet with some wonderful people there, some brothers and sisters who really, when you get together with them, it's quite a humbling experience.
Now, a recent report is talking about the kidnapping of Christian girls in Egypt, and it continues unabated. Gary, a U.S.-based advocacy organization, Coptic Solidarity, is calling on the Egyptian government to step in and take a stand against these kidnappings. What happens to these girls once they're taken?
We don't have all of the details about what's happening to them, but this is a problem that happens not only in Egypt, but as you know, in Nigeria. You know, the Chibok girls that were taken, forced to marry Muslim men, older Muslim men, is often the case that the thing that happens to them, and the other thing that often happens is a forced conversion. So they're forced to convert to Islam as a part of their abduction. So a pretty terrible time for these young girls, and a lot of them are very young. Some of them are 12, 13, 14 years old, and many of them are still missing all around the world. It's not just in Egypt, but in many other countries as well.
How do the governments not look at these men as being pedophiles? Young children.
I know it, but it for whatever reason it's a societal acceptance. They accept it for whatever reason.
Their
It's
cultural norms,
something
I
that
guess,
they,
right?
yeah, yeah, and they just turn a blind eye to it. It's cultural norms.
Wow. And I bet a lot of these young girls get new identities as well, probably new names when they're forced to marry these older
Yeah,
men.
for sure.
Wow.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, things, Gary, are also apparently getting tougher for Christians in India. The northern Indian state of Haryana may become the ninth state to adopt legislation forcing conversion to Hinduism. What will that mean for many believers there?
This is happening all over India, and we're hearing reports of atrocities that are happening. Um, what's happened in India is that by the government, the present government that was elected in 2014, has a mandate, and they want to turn India back to a Hindu country by the end of 2021. So that's not that far away.
Right.
And so they're very sympathetic to all of the people that the Hindu extremists. And so a lot of extreme things are happening to Christians, forced conversions again. If they don't comply, their churches are burned down. There's some horrible things that are happening to them, and basically the government is saying to be Indian is to be Hindu. And so, again, they turn a blind eye to the extremism that's happening. The other thing that we're seeing in India right now, of course, is with COVID-19 and with the aid that's being distributed in many of these places, and where you mentioned, indeed, in North India, these are often rural places, and so the aid is given to the elders of the community to distribute. And so the elders of the community automatically know who the Christians are. And they force the Christians to wait at the back of the line, knowing that they're not going to get any food anyway. And so they send them to the back of the line, and they usually go without anything.
Are they doing this something similar to those who are Muslim, not just the Christians?
In India, yes, they're doing a
Wow.
similar thing to Muslim people in India.
Gary, how have you seen COVID-19 impact our persecuted brothers and sisters living in countries like China, North Korea, and Syria?
Uh, in many of the countries, COVID-19, I mean, persecution was bad before, but for our brothers and sisters who are being persecuted, COVID-19 has just added another whole layer to that. And many of these countries already have, very volatile health systems, economic systems, and so they're just not getting the help that they need. Again, in many places, because they're Christians, they're relegated to the end of the line, or to the back of the line, and they're not able to get the medicine, the food, and all of the things that they need. And so in some places, they're just desperate. In India, I know that there are people who are starving.
So, what initiatives is Open Doors taking to support persecuted Christians impacted by COVID-19, especially even in the northern camps in the Iraqi city of Mosul? I mean, the virus can spread quite quickly through the camps where so many have been displaced.
Well, that's the other thing, because they live in such close quarters, and we can social distance, and it's easy for us. I mean, I live in my house. I'm here. My wife is in her office upstairs, and we can do the social distancing thing. It's not a problem. But for these people, many times there's multiple families living under one roof. And so that becomes a problem. We've had to switch, to be honest, some of our programming, some of our priorities, where we were moving away from a lot of the aid stuff that we were doing in places like Syria, going to focus now in the next couple of years on more discipleship and training and so on. We've had to switch back and start to help with the feeding again.
Now, can you explain, Gary, what kind of impact these programs are really having on persecuted believers and their families?
Well, I think in many cases they're just keeping them alive, to be honest. And of course, the overarching thing is that they become very aware that that they're not alone, and that's so important for them to understand that there are people in the West who are remembering them, who have not forgotten them, who are holding them up in prayer. And so that's a big thing. But right now, it's just a matter of survival as well. So the things that we're doing are just trying to help them stay alive right now.
What are some of the things that most people do not realize about the persecuted church?
Oftentimes, when people think of persecution, they automatically think of violence, and they think it's always violent, but it's not. I mean, there is the violence. Obviously, we just talked about the girls being kidnapped and so on, and churches burned and pastors killed, and there are all of those things. But for the majority of people, it's just the marginalization every day of the things that they go through. Um, they're just, like I say, put to the end of the line. They are given the worst jobs in society. They're held back. Their kids can't get decent education because they're Christians. And so there are all of these things that are just constantly squeezing them into that place where the persecutors want them to be. And so it's not always violence, but it's the daily pressure, the daily squeeze that they feel.
Gary, as Canadians, what can we do to really help our brothers and sisters in Christ who are suffering in these countries? I mean, prayer is probably a good start, right?
Yeah, you said prayer at the beginning, and I was so happy to hear that, because if you ask them, that's what they ask for. If you ask them, what can we do for you? They always say prayer, even though it's obvious they need so much other stuff. But they would say, pray for them, and I would say, don't forget about them, and support them. Give them the prayer support they need, but also donate to organizations that are helping our brothers and sisters around the world who are going through persecution.
Now, you offer opportunities for people to join Open Doors for missions trips. Tell me more about that.
We go on trips of encouragement. Those have been suspended for this year, obviously, but we go on trips where we just go to encourage them. We call it our international presence ministry. So we don't go and make ourselves obvious and preach on street corners, or even build buildings and stuff like that. We don't do anything that will draw attention, but we go there to meet secretly with these believers and encourage them.
Last time you and I chatted as well, Gary, you mentioned countries like Pakistan, North Korea, and China, where persecution is really bad for Christians right now. Are those still some of the countries on your watch list?
Oh yeah, for sure. The Pakistan would be in the top 10. All of those that you mentioned are really high up on the list.
So where can viewers go to learn more about Open Doors and to donate?
They can go to opendoorsca.org, and they can sign up for our newsletter, for our prayer calendars. They can make donations there. And also, I would mention that they can sign up for a Zoom prayer meeting. The first Tuesday of every month, we have just started a Zoom prayer meeting where we come together as believers in Canada to pray for the persecuted church. So we would invite anybody that wants to join us to go to our website at opendoorsca.org and sign up for that. And just inform yourself about what's happening, and then as the Lord would lead, just respond to what you're learning.
So Gary, what kind of rewards do you get out of being involved with Open Doors Canada?
For me, it's the reward of being with persecuted believers. I think it's just such the humbling experience of being with them. We often think of ourselves, I was a pastor for many years, and you think of yourself as having a certain level of spirituality. But when you're with a persecuted believer and, they're asking you to pray for them, and you see the incredible faith that they have, so often I want to say, can you please pray for me? I think I'm the one that needs the prayer.
Wow.
And so that's, I think, the gift. It just kind of puts things in perspective for me, and helps me to realize that I don't really have it all that bad here in Canada.
Amen
as a
to
Christian.
that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Gary Stagg, Executive Director of Open Doors Canada, thanks for joining me today from Mississauga, Ontario.
You're very welcome. Thank you anytime.
On behalf of all of us here at BCN, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless, and thanks so much for watching.